Welcome to Reading and Ranting, where we read obsessively and rant about life in our 20s. I'm Carly.
I'm Mia.
I'm Gill.
Today we have a very special episode because we are going back to Basgiath War College. That's right. We are recapping Fourth Wing and Iron Flame in preparation of our most anticipated release of the year, obviously, Onyx Storm, coming out January 21st. Literally a week and 2 days from the time that we're recording this podcast, and by the time this podcast is up, you'll only have 3 more days to wait. So hope you're all listening. And we are going to basically be recapping the important stuff, what you need to know, and then we're going to be talking about all of our exciting theories. As we know, I'm our resident theory expert. So both Jill and I have reread Fourth Wing and Iron Flame in anticipation.
I have not, but as you guys know, if you listen to last week's episode, I've been in my hockey romance era, so I did try to reread, but unfortunately the LGBTQ hockey romance books were just calling my name. So I heard a voice in my head and I couldn't ignore it. But very excited that Mia and Jill have reread. And if you're not familiar with Jill, she's been on an episode before. She's our resident best friend, also romantasy lover, book expert, etc., etc. So excited to have her here. Any words, Jill, before we dive in?
Oh, you know, I'm excited to be here. I also brought along a special friend to join us today, our own baby Andarna.
Get her out. Show her for anyone who's watching. Show her to the camera. Jill did go to a Jellycat exchange for a Secret Santa, very cute, and she did get a little gold dragon. So she's our resident Andarna. And yeah, let's get into it. Theories for Onyx Storm.
Okay. Hopefully, if you're listening to this podcast, you have read both Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, because this will be a huge spoiler-filled review of both of those books. So I think starting off, let's just recap the important points, bring you back into the world, whether you've reread or you're listening to this podcast as a refresher. So Fourth Wing, we have our setting. It's set at Basgiath War College in the Kingdom of Navarre. And this is a prestigious military academy, and there's 4 quadrants. There's the infantry, there's the healers, there's the scribes, and then there's the riders quadrant. And the riders quadrant is for where dragon riders are trained. So our main character, Violet Sorrengail, our girl, she is initially training to be a scribe in the scribe quadrant, but her mom, who is the general of she's one of the generals in the army of Navarre and a dragon rider, forces her to go into the conscript into the riders quadrant instead, and that is where our story kicks off. So a couple of important points, I think, good world building points to remember here. So obviously we are in the Kingdom of Navarre. Navarre has 6 provinces, the most important of which is Tairn, or not most important which, but remember this for later, the province of Tairn. Very, not they're all important, obviously.
Yeah, if you don't have it out already, get your map out.
Love the map. Love the map. It's bordered by the Kingdom of Paromial, which is the second kingdom on the continent. And basically, Paromial and Navarre have been at war for centuries. So Navarre's dragon riders are at war with, they think, the griffin riders of Paromial. So this is their greatest enemy, okay? So Navarre, really importantly, is protected by both dragons and magic wards. So basically we have Violet, we have dragons. Dragon riders have magic, and these kind of, I guess, magic powers. They manifest and they're called their signets. So that's their signature power. What else do we have here?
What else do we have? We have different runes, which essentially we'll learn about in book 2, so we can hold off on that for now. We're also going to have the different challenges that they face throughout it. So I don't feel like we shouldn't get into that yet, though. I feel like we should hold off a bit.
No, I think we can get into it. Let's give a little overview. I feel
of what life
everyone knows, and this goes without being said, this is a theory episode, so we will be talking about Fourth Wing and Iron Flame in its entirety. So spoilers will be shared. If you haven't read these, then stop listening, go read, and then you can come back in anticipation of Onyx Storm.
I feel like we hop into the recap then.
Yeah.
We just go from the beginning. I think it's the best way to explain how we got from Violet's first day in the Basgiath College to the honorary upcoming new book of Onyx Storm. Okay, let's jump in. So we start off, Violet is thrust into the heart of war, crosses the parapet. She meets, of course, our very own group, her little squad in Fourth Wing, where we have all of our favorite characters that will take us to the next 2 books. We, of course, also meet our favorite daddy, of course, Xaden.
Shadow Daddy. Shadow Daddy mentioned.
He is probably, I think, one of my personal favorite male book characters. He's definitely up there for me.
In terms of book boyfriends, he's definitely a top.
Yeah, he's my perfect man, I think.
Tell your matchmaker that.
I will. And she's basically thrust into different training challenges. She's got to cross the gauntlet, of course, which I'm sure we all know about. She poisons her enemies. She learns how to be a fighter. And of course, she falls in love.
And bonds 2 dragons.
Oh, two whole
the
dragons.
most powerful rider in her generation.
And baby Andarna.
And baby Andarna. Yes. So, okay, we love Violet. I feel like Fourth Wing in general, like a lot of it is obviously like there's so much setup and character growth for Violet within Basgiath and like her journey there. And it all culminates in, by the end of the book, we realize that Violet has uncovered this massive propaganda cover-up by her kingdom. So the Kingdom of Navarre is basically lying to its citizens, and the threat to their country and like everything that they're training against isn't actually the Griffin Riders of Paromial, but it's the Venin, the dark wielders that Violet previously thought were only children's fairy tales and fables.
Yeah. And we get an iconic line to end Fourth Wing, which is where we uncover that Violet's so-called dead older brother, Brennan, is actually alive, and he is leading a rebellion against, what would you say it's against? Just the kingdom,
I mean,
system.
it's a revolution, like, against Navarre, but also, like, for fighting the Venin. Like, their end goal is fighting and stopping the Venin, no matter what.
Yeah, because basically Navarre is like hiding the fact that like Venin exists.
Yes.
So Brennan's alive, and at the end of Fourth Wing, we get the iconic ending line to Violet, "Welcome to the Rebellion." Revolution, excuse me. Same thing. So then
it's not the same thing. Violet literally says you're using the word revolution and not rebellion. That means you think you'll win.
Wow.
Like, yeah. Words have power. Violet's a scribe.
But okay, then we get to Iron Flame, and basically we kind of like pick up immediately after Fourth Wing. So Violet is grappling with the revelations that her brother Brennan survived, and also he has this like really key leading role in a secret rebellion. But in terms of like our key developments in this book, we do return to the War College. So we have like the same faces: Violet, Xaden. We got her besties, Riddock, Brennan,
Sawyer.
Yeah.
Second Squad, Flame Section, Fourth Wing.
But then we also get some new faces. So Liam, may he rest in peace. He gave his life at the end of Fourth Wing while fighting the Venin to basically save Violet, and we get his younger sister comes as like a rookie newbie to the War College, Basgiath. She is in the dragon riding sector,
as all the children of the former rebellion leaders must enter the college.
Yeah. So basically, Violet is like dealing with having to conceal this knowledge of the Venin, conceal knowledge of the rebellion. Like, she can't even tell her own mother that her brother is alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or her sister.
Yeah. But then also we get Violet and Xaden's relationship really, like, we get deeper into it. So in this first book, they're basically, you know, kind of like enemies to lovers. I think in one of our previous episodes, we basically said they're supposed to be enemies to lovers. I would say it's almost like insta love, honestly, but like with a little bit of like tension and hate mixed in. But now they kind of like openly love each other. But then actually we start getting some strain because of secrets and external pressures. So not all is love in this land. It is, you know, we're getting some real relationship struggles here, which I think most people could probably relate to.
And at the same time, because Violet is now facing all these secrets that she has to essentially hide from her best friends, they go through a series of hoops to basically uncover Navarre's, you know, hidden secrets that have been, you know, building for generations and decades. And of course, we have the introduction of Major Varish, which is a key pivotal part of the story. And of course, as we get into our theory section, he does lead us to some interesting potential newbies around what Violet's potential signet is and some other key, you know, faces in the war. Of course, Violet is then tortured to keep her secret, which we do learn that she's able to. And we realize that Dane is actually a good guy, which I think is like one of the biggest plot points in Iron Flame, is that Dane does come to our side.
I'm a Dane apologist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was a loud Dane hater, and I am a reformed Dane hater, and I am now a Dane apologist.
I mean, honestly, didn't I always say, like, I didn't think Dane was like, what he did was that bad? Like, yeah, it was like humiliating what he was trying to do, and like he definitely was he was basically being like, I don't believe, Violet, that you can be strong, that you can be a dragon rider, like blah blah blah. And she obviously, you know, showed him who's boss. But yeah, I'm here for the Dane redemption arc.
Well, to be fair, he did tell his dad what the deal was, and his dad did try to kill all of them.
And Liam and the other girl.
But again, I mean, I think
but he didn't know.
He didn't know.
So the important,
he was naive.
I think the important part, here is, like, if you've read Sarah J. Maas, like, he's like a kale. He's a product of his environment. Like, he loves and lives by the rules, which are built on a set of lies. So, like, obviously, like, he was operating within a system.
Yeah, and it's really hard. It's, like, really hard for him to come to terms with the fact that it was built on a bed of lies. But then eventually he does, you know, see the light. He sees the light of the rebellion and what's happening.
So Violet basically takes all of Fourth Wing, and then kind of part two, like getting into the second act of the book. I think it's literally divided between this and part one and part two.
I think it's part one, part two, and part three.
Right. So then part two kicks off, and basically Violet and her squad spill the secret to all of the cadets at Basgiath War College, and they end up fleeing to Xaden's home fortress, the capital city of Tirandor. Yeah, the Riorson house in Aredia.
It's not a romantasy book if the male main character love interest is not like a king who's like rich or something like that, like a prince. Like
technically, he's the Duke of Aredia.
Yeah. No, he's okay. Like unrealistic standards for every reader out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so they flee to where the rebellion is housed, the revolution is housed at Riorson House, and basically all of the cadets continue training, and they decide to join the revolution because they realize now the dragons, if their dragons told the truth to them and showed them the truth of what they're fighting, the venom, because the dragons have known all along, but they have their own secret motives, which we'll get into later, for protecting their hatching grounds in the Vale, which is where all the magic is, which is what the venom are ultimately seeking, is that magic-filled land from where the dragon hatching grounds are at Basgiath War College. So they've fled Basgiath, they're training, they're part of the revolution, and kind of the next important step here in Iron Flame is for them to build a forge to be able to make the weapons that can kill venom. So the only weapons that can kill venom are alloy, which is like a special type of metal that's like, I guess, like an amalgamation of various metals, like literally alloy. And with this fun plot point, they take a little field trip to go get this forge.
Yeah, it's giving Superman, like, kryptonite, like, you know?
Yeah. That's honestly exactly what I imagined it. And then they have, like, all of, like, there's, like, other, I don't know if you noticed, this is a side point, there's other stones, like, that, like, runes can be made of and, like, tempered with and stuff, like Mayorite. Yeah. Anyways, funny
I
story.
wonder what they're like.
So there's like a periodic table.
I wonder what their periodic table looks like.
Very confusing. I don't know. I hope Rebecca and her editors have a lock on all of that.
I would love to see the textbook.
Not only is prepping for Onyx Storm like preparing for like a history AP, it's like, do I suddenly need to dive back into my chemistry knowledge?
Honestly, a little bit. And then it's like magic. I know what's so funny is that like they're in this war college and like they take class, like they're like, we have physics, but like the physics is like if you're dismounting a dragon at like a certain angle, like what speed, velocity do you have to
Guys,
make? Like,
I was good at math, but the second there was like a word problem involved, I was like, what's happening? Who's running? Sarah has this many Sarah has 4 apples and John has 4. I don't know what the total is. How many apples do they have? Like, you know what? Fuck all the guys that are like, oh, you only read romance. Smart. You need to be smart to read these books. Otherwise, you're not understanding a goddamn thing.
yeah, like how do you think I'm tracking not only like the propaganda fake history, but then also the actual history, and then on top of all of that, the other world building
You
elements.
need to be like incredibly intuitive to understand every aspect of these books and be able to not only process it in the moment, but keep it in your mind.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
every other book to come.
Exactly. So okay, back to
recap.
quick recap plot summary. So
We meet Kat.
we meet Kat.
We
Jill,
meet Kat.
take it from here.
I hate this trope. I hate this trope so much, you guys, because I think Violet is such a badass. And
Kat is too.
Kat is too. I'm not shitting on Kat.
No, but that's why it's like I hate pitting women against each other.
Yeah.
But like it makes them enemies. And like Kat's whole signet is to like, you know,
Temper
it's
emotions.
it's to like amp her up.
It's giving Jasper from Twilight. I'm sorry.
No, literally, that is her. That
I
is.
will have a
her,
connection to like any
whatever.
book, movie, whatever for this book. Like, just give me
You
some
did
time.
Twilight for the end of Iron Flame too, when Violet figures out Xaden's signet. If you listen to our Iron Flame episode from 2023, when Iron Flame first came out, Carly has a Twilight connection. So we're 2 for 2.
This book is basically Twilight but with dragons. Just
And
kidding.
it's Harry Potter. Like,
It's all of it.
Yeah, so we're introduced to Kat and some of the other Griffin writers because Kat is actually third in line to the throne of Paromial because her uncle is the Viscount of Takaris.
Yeah, sorry, I would not want to compete with a princess. I'm out, respectfully.
yeah. But the thing is we like even though in the end, like, you know, Kat kind of redeems herself, which we'll get to. I do think that she like kind of like makes it easy to hate her when she literally is like, oh, you know that like trick that like Xaden does
With his fingers?
With his fingers, like I taught him that, and I'm like, that would heat me too.
That I really did not like. I just
The
didn't
jealous
like,
extra.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I just thought it was kind of unnecessary. Like we could have just like let them be like fun friends who just like fought together,
Or like rivals, but like why did it have to be based around Xaden?
Xaden.
Yeah.
Regardless, we meet Kat, which leads
No
to
man is that great. I'm sorry.
no man is worth
No
that.
man is that great.
Basically, this leads to the Griffin Riders and the Dragon Riders like joining together. They're gonna go defeat the big villain, which is the Venom, essentially. They all start training together. They all team up together, and also during this time, Andarna's literally growing. Like she was asleep for half of the book.
3 months.
3 months, and then she comes back. She got the dreamless sleep.
The dreamless
is so
sleep
chill.
sounds nice.
Sounds
Sounds lovely.
And she just like comes back a teenage dragon, and she's like purple all of a sudden, and she's she's clearly like this key point to the book. But so she comes back as this whole new dragon during this time.
Yes. So Andarna has grown. She's exited the dreamless sleep. They now have the Griffin Riders at
They're ready.
Aredia.
They're ready.
Like everything is ready. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we kind of reach the climax of the book, which is where the military leadership of Navarre comes to the revolution asking for aid because the commanding general of the army is General Melgren. The way I'm like dropping formal titles, like this is like how I have like cataloged all of this information.
I'm like, what's his name?
Like the fact that this is basically like you're recounting like the British monarchy, but it's like this fictional.
No, honestly, kind of like but we've got Viscount Takaris.
Mia's mind is a little.
If there was an
like,
AP
it's
test on this,
shocking.
Mia would get a 5.
I would get a 5. Yeah.
Carly and I would be like 2 range right now.
I mean, I think you would be 3. I'd probably be 2 because I didn't reread.
Yeah. So basically, Navarre So General Melgren, his signet is being able to see the outcome of a battle before it's happened. So he foresees a battle where Navarre loses unless they ask the Revolution for help. So they ask the Revolution for help. The Revolution is like, you can go fuck yourself. Literally, Brennan outs himself to his mother after his mother thinks that he's been dead for 6 years.
Sorry, this part was crazy.
Crazy.
He just like waltzes in.
Crazy. He's like, you left your children to die to uphold a lie. And she's like, okay, we'll get into this later. I could talk about General Sorrengail for days.
This is all theory connected. Like,
yes,
you have to come back.
Theory connected. So we're coming back.
I very much relate to Violet. Mommy issues, like, they're
Yeah.
tough. They're tough.
So basically, they foresee this battle. Turns out that battle was actually not the actual conflict, because in the real conflict, the Revolution does help, and Xaden and Violet come back to Basgiath, and that's where the final confrontation, climax of Iron Flame happens. So Violet had attempted to raise the wards in Aredia at Riorson House with their second wardstone, but something had gone wrong. And retranslating the book, basically, Violet and Jacinia, our girl Jacinia, from the Scribe Quadrant, Resident Scribe.
And again, remember, Jasenia is the one who at the very beginning of Fourth Wing writes the little like memo, basically being like, this is a transcript of what happened. So basically what we're reading is all in the past, but we know Jasenia ultimately survives whatever happens.
Yes. And so that's all we know.
Yeah.
So Jacinia realized that Violet had made an error in the translation, and it's not the 6 and the 1 of dragons.
There's 7.
There's 7.
7 dragons.
So we realize Violet, our girl Andarna, literally like the angels can sing. I love Andarna. She has her moment.
Andarna.
There we go.
That's too much of a deep cut, Danny Phantom. Like, anyways.
Yeah, the Fourth Wing TV show, like the screenwriters should just like hire us.
Yeah,
at this point, that was perfect. So that's Andarna's little character theme. So basically, the huge revelation that saves the day is that Andarna is actually a 7th breed of dragon. So there's red dragons, blue dragons, brown dragons, green dragons,
Orange dragons,
and black dragons. And those are the 6 that they know of. And they all have different tail types, like whatever. Andarna is a 7th breed of dragon.
We don't really even know her full color yet.
We don't know her color.
Yeah.
She's kind of like camouflaging, reflective. There's like some important things. She's iridescent. There's some important things.
Want to what this relates back to? All the dragons in Harry Potter.
Sure.
Yeah. Had to point it out. Sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Thank you. Exactly right. Correct.
That's what I thought of too.
So we have the discovery. Violet realizes this, and they're able to raise the wards at Basgiath again, refire the ward stone, raise the wards, save the day. In doing so, General Sorrengail gives up her life and her power to power the ward stone to like kickstart it, to like charge it.
What was her power again?
She was a storm wielder.
Oh yes.
Yeah, which is why it was so important when like Violet was crossing the parapet.
Yeah. Important. So Violet, obviously, with the heart of a writer and the mind of a scribe, saves the day at the end of the day with Andarna, her second bonded dragon, who's a secret 7th breed of dragon who had waited 650 years to hatch. Important timeline because the Great War happened 600 years ago. So the book ends, and it also ends with, I think, the most important thing that we're all freaking out about and waiting for answers, Rebecca, Xaden turned Venin while Violet was raising the wards, while he was battling the sage / maven general of the Venin, and in order to kill him.
Scene also was like heart-wrenching. With like I'm not going to pronounce the dragon's name on
scale
on this podcast. For fear of
Xaden's dragon.
For fear of your fans.
His dragon is mated to Tairn.
Violet's dragon.
Violet's dragon. Violet's first dragon. But yeah, I'll never forget where it's basically like Violet's talking to Xaden, and then basically he turns around and his eyes are starting to look like the Venins do, like red and like like veiny.
Yeah.
So
distended veins.
It's like Vampire Diaries, like when they're like hungry, you know, it gets red and there's like the veins.
Yeah.
That's what I'm imagining.
Yeah.
So heart, like knife to the chest. We're like, baby Xaden, like what's gonna happen to you? And we don't know. We have to see an Onyx Storm. Like, so basically we're like, okay, so this is kind of setting up the scene for Onyx Storm. We're gonna be on a cure to fight
the venom. Basically,
Yeah.
like something killed off the venom 600 years ago in the Great War, and for the past several centuries, they've been building up strength again, and they're finally strong enough to attack. So something killed them back then, and that's what Violet and Co. are going to be searching for,
Violet
especially
and Co.
Violet and Squad, because
I don't know, I like Violet and Co.
you know Violet and Co.
Company.
Violet and Company, proprietary, because that is what we're going to be needing to solve Xaden accidentally, or not, I mean, he purposefully turned Brennan to save himself and Violet and all of Basgiath in the final fight.
Yeah.
So,
which leads us to where we're at.
yes.
So finally, we're going to get into some of our theories for Onyx Storm. And I feel like in our Iron Flame deep dive, like recap episode, we got into some of these, but this is like a refresher course. And also, while I did not reread, Mia and Gill did. And like upon their reread, they noticed so many more things. Like I feel like so many people across Book Talk have a lot more theories ever. Like we've had a year, I guess, to like ponder what happened in Iron Flame, really like think about it, strategize, theorize. So excited to get into some of these.
Yeah, I think we start off with her second signet.
Yeah, I think this is the most important like piece of the puzzle, Violet's second signet. So her first signet, obviously she wields lightning through Tairn. So now that Andarna is out of the dreamless sleep and she's a juvenile, she's
back,
she's a
baby.
teenager, she's back, she's sassy, she's powerful.
Yeah, she's hormonal.
Yes, she's a hormonal.
Literally nightmare blunt rotation, teenage Andarna, like
Or kind of like dream blood rotation.
Yeah, wait, she's actually like so
She's
funny.
so
She's
funny.
so funny. She's so
hormonal
bitchy.
Teenager, that's my nightmare dream mode.
No, I would actually love just like I think my dream blood rotation is Xaden's dragon, who I will not name on this podcast once again, Tairn and Andarna.
Honestly, yeah.
Fair.
Right?
Like what I would give to be part of that mind bond.
What
and
I would
just
give to
be
be
in
a
their
fly
heads.
on the wall.
Except I don't want to hear Tairn banging his girl. I don't need to hear it.
Yo, I mean, Violet and Xaden don't even want to hear it. That's how intense it is.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so
the second signet.
Second signet. So as a refresher, signets are the power that they manifest through channeling power through their bond with their dragon. So importantly, signets are actually have nothing to do with the dragon, but like the power level has to do with the dragon, but what the power ends up being has everything to do with what the rider needs. So like Violet has this, line where she's describing, so like Xaden needs to keep secrets, so his signet manifested as shadows. And his second signet, which he got a second signet, not because he has two dragons, but because his dragon Scale had previously bonded a rider in his family line, his grandfather. So he has a second secret signet. This was another huge secret between Xaden and Violet. And it's that he's a type of intinnsic, which are typically, it's a death sentence.
Illegal, yeah, if you're an intinnsic. So I actually think in Fourth Wing there was an intinnsic and they kill him off.
Yes, and they kill him.
Because it kind of like comes out when it's developing, it kind of comes out as like schizophrenia because you're like kind of like hearing things and like because you can kind of like
it
read
depends.
people.
But the reason why it's a capital offense is because it's a danger to the propaganda and the cover up.
Yeah.
So they're not allowed to live. But Xaden's type of intinnsic is that he can read intentions, right? So he can like kind of like he can read people.
Which makes it all the more upsetting when you really go back through the book.
Yes.
Because you realize that Xaden knew that in the first book, Jack Barlow was about to push Violet off the parapet, which is why he told her to go. Not because he hated her or wanted to kill her, but because he like wanted to save her. And he like the whole time throughout book 2, you realize that, he actually knows that Violet truly loves him. Even though she keeps saying, oh no, I don't.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, there's so many moments where Xaden is seen using his powers. It's even outright stated in Iron Flame. Like he he tells Violet, I didn't have time to question all of the Griffin riders on their intentions. And Violet is like, oh, as though his like judge of character is so good.
I mean, we also know like in the first book when she's basically trying to spy on him and like the other kids of the rebellion, like he literally knew she was there. Like he's speaking so that she hears.
Yes. So that's what a signet is and how important it is to a writer. So Violet's first signet is the lightning wielding. We have a couple theories on what her second signet through Andarna could be. I think the leading two that we're going to get into, because we don't have time to go through all of them, are the first being potentially resurrection and the second potentially being a truth sayer. So let's get into resurrection first.
Yeah.
And can I just say, back to the Harry Potter connection.
I knew this was coming.
I think I even said this like in our Fourth Wing episode. I was like, it's basically like Harry Potter, except instead of a school for wizards, it's a school for dragon riders. And of course we have the other like sectors too, but we focus on the dragon riders. Resurrection, the whole Venom tale starts with three brothers who ultimately become Venom. The tale of Beetle and Bard, the Deathly Hollows, the three brothers that like all get their own Deathly Hollow, and then we have the Resurrection Stone. Like, come on, tell me there's no tie-in there. So that's why I'm ultimately convinced it could be Resurrection, because I mean, like, all fantasy books kind of rip off of each other, but I don't know. I'm seeing it.
I mean, it makes sense. It's also a great commentary on folklore and like the importance of it, like which is like what Violet's dad left her, the book and the fables. Anyways,
Which is in our other,
which is we'll come back to that in some of the other
What did
theories.
Dumbledore leave to
You're done.
I'm done.
I'm taking over.
I'm done. Okay.
You're done.
Resurrection. So here's the thing. We know that Rebecca Yarros said in interviews that Violet's second signet is mentioned, like it's outright named, and it's manifested in her. Like Violet has used her power. So these basically are the two that I think make the most sense because they seem to be directly foreshadowed in her actions. So I think they're going to be important in both ways.
Agreed.
Resurrection, I think the most important one is that while she's in the torture chamber with Major Varish, she manifests Liam, who passed away at the end of Fourth Wing, to keep her company throughout that week. And there's like a couple of important ways that Liam and Violet interact. Like Violet herself even says multiple times, like, wow, my imagination is so good. Like, you know, you're a hallucination, blah, 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 blah. And I don't think that's true because I think it is Liam's spirit. I think it's his ghost, whatever. And I think there's some potentially important, like, also conflicts with how they burn the items of deceased people, but Violet kept
his
letters to Sloane. So, like, I think there's some important tie to why the kingdom rules it as a law. Like, because they don't make any laws without it tying back to keeping the cover up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, why would they have a law that mandates burning all of the possessions of the deceased, if not that like keeping a possession is important for some reason? Anyways, point being, and like there's just a couple other things. So she manifests Liam. He's speaking. He knows where Violet is. Like he's like they won't be able to. He knows all of these details that like Violet herself wouldn't know if he was a hallucination. So Rebecca Yarros did debunk that her signet is speaking to the dead, but I don't think that debunks resurrection as a whole.
No,
I think it's
feel
too
like
important.
She's so tricky. And also in another section of the book, it is mentioned that no other riders had the signet of resurrection.
Yes.
Which I feel like, why would she just throw that line in there? Because I'm very of the belief that Rebecca Yarros does not just throw lines in her books.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's very purposeful, and I do think it makes sense. It also is something Violet very much needs. Like, the whole point, they need to resurrect. Like, she would essentially need to resurrect these royals who were alive 600 years ago to figure out how they defeated the Venom.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So,
and also this quote that says, after all, bonding makes you a rider, but resurrecting someone, now that makes you a god.
And that was said in Fourth Ring by Professor Cowrie in their class on signets. So like it's hinted at so much that like resurrecting has never been a signet. There's no signet capable of resurrection. But then Cowrie goes on to say resurrecting somebody would make you a god. Like Violet is clearly the most powerful of her generation, and like what does she need at the end of the day? She needs information from dead people who were alive before 400 years ago.
The other point I just connected to, and I don't think we talked about this before, is the actual resurrections essentially of a full dragon species. Because Andarna is fully waiting for her to be born. And in this whole time, her whole species of dragon is dead.
I was going to say, because resurrections never existed before, and Andarna's never existed before.
Exactly.
So this is something completely new. And also, who else is dead now that she's going to have to speak to get some, like, important information? General Sorrengill.
Yes.
Like, I definitely see that for Onyx Storm, her having to communicate to her mom.
100%. 100%.
Or her dad.
So I think there's just like so many important points. And then the second, and this is like getting into like headcanon-y type theory, Xaden tells Violet so many times, Violet, you're going to be the death of me, or like you'll be the death of me, Violet, in some form or another. It's repeated so many times, especially in the first book, Fourth Wing. And I just think like potentially, now that we know that Xaden is Venom and Violet's going to be having to work with him to like find the cure and also while keeping that a secret from other people, like, is she going to have to kill Xaden and somehow resurrect him to save him? This is, shout out Laurel. This is Laurel's theory.
Oh my gosh.
Shout out Mia's mom, cousin.
Mom of two and 36-year-old cousin.
In our little group chat.
In our group chat text.
She's so funny.
Yeah.
I really hope he doesn't die in any sense of form. I don't know. I just couldn't deal with that heartbreak that I would have to.
I think it's like
that could be like her as like SJM's like thing is always there like being like one love interest and then there's a second or like a third or whatever.
Yeah.
Like this could be her like SJM tie-in.
This is also, it's a 5-book series. So like,
but
I'm
Rebecca
thinking,
said it was Endgame.
Yeah,
Endgame.
yes.
So he has to
Rebecca
come
did
back.
say that Xaden,
He's Endgame.
he would come back. So I'm just thinking like, for the arc of storytelling, resurrection makes so much sense. Like Violet can talk to her dad, her parents, Liam, like, you know, there's just so much there. I think it goes along with what Violet ultimately needs at the end of the day, which is the truth.
Agreed.
So signet possibility number 2.
Which I'm actually more aligned with. And I was not originally. Like, I was actually staunch resurrectionist.
So and like picture this, you guys, like we literally probably sent 300 plus texts earlier today
in the span of like an hour,
in the span of like a 40-minute subway ride that I was on, solely like going back and forth for this. And Gill is like, oh, 100% her signet is resurrection. By the end of our string of texts, Gill is like, oh my god, she's probably a truthsayer.
And here's my number one. Here's my number one. Andarna says to Violet, I chose you because you had the mind of a scribe and the heart of a writer. Mind of a scribe. Like, that has to be critical. Like, she clearly loves facts. She needs the truth.
Spitting facts.
She needs facts. Receipts.
I'm just
receipts,
laughing.
proof, timeline.
I'm laughing that you called it a staunch resurrectionist. It sounds like you're like
oh my god, I did not mean it like that.
I know, I'm saying it sounds like it's like a political party. You like you leaned left and now you're like leaning right or like something.
Oh, don't say that to your fans. Let's not create conspiracy
in the world
theories.
of Navarre, not our world.
Yeah, this is nothing to do with the modern day century.
Clearly.
So I think that this is important because I'm kind of also a truthsayer apologist as well. Like, I was like, there's no way it would be that obvious, but then
it is.
Yeah,
it is.
Sometimes it is that obvious. So,
I mean, that also, it almost ties into Xaden's signet of like being able to read intentions, and their dragons are bonded and they're bonded basically. Like, I would definitely see their second signets kind of connecting to each other.
So here's my textual evidence, and like I think this goes back to how like Rebecca was like her second signet was named. So they dropped resurrection as a signet in Fourth Wing. In Iron Flame, we get at the, you know how at the top of every single chapter there's like the little blurbs from like historical documents and texts. That's what I feel like is fucking like AP Euro history. Me reading all of those and like taking note of like who was it written by, like when was it written and whatever. Yeah. So we get one of those in Iron Flame, and it reads, "The only signet more terrifying than an intinnsic is a truthsayer, and yet we let them live." And that's from Major Offrendo's Guide to the Writer's Quadrant. So that's like a published text in Navarre. So like they're not hiding anything. That's just straight up a fact. They let truthsayers live, and it's a dangerous, terrifying signet. So for me, this ties back to, at her core,
Violet just
Jill
needs-
said,
yeah,
Violet needs the truth. And this is like the entire basis of her fight. I think this is why it makes sense in a storytelling arc, because
because
that's
the whole
the
book
basis
too is
of
them
her fight
fighting. Yeah.
with Xaden, and she keeps saying like that her ultimatum is, I need full disclosure, or like
Exactly.
or nothing. Like, I need the entire truth from you. It's why she's relentless about going after the journals from the first 6 writers to find the wards. Like, she knows that there's truth out there somewhere, and she's gonna find it. So we don't really know like what truth, quote unquote, truth sayer like really looks like. Like, maybe it manifests for her as like people can't lie to her. Maybe it manifests as like she can tell when people are lying. Like, it's kind of giving like more from ACOTAR, like your power is truth. Like, don't really know what it is, but in some way it all comes back to Violet needing to find out the truth, and she's going to be the person to uncover like in its entirety this massive cover up. So I think I think there's evidence in for both. I think both are going to continue to be like important themes in some way, but I literally cannot wait to see officially like what her second signet is.
No,
confirmed.
I think in a way I do also hope it's something that we don't think it is. Like,
Yeah.
I want it to be not expected. I want it to not be a TikTok theory or something that everyone else is talking about or something that we are obviously like so sure about. I want it to be something so out of left field that I'm like gasping while reading this book. Like, I don't want to expect it, you know?
Yeah, I feel like that's fair. I mean, I feel like there's going to be parts in this book where like we're like literally screaming, crying, throwing up,
And I
like
hope.
gasping for air.
I hope.
Yeah.
Which I think brings us into the next theory, which we think is Nolan, Tairn's previous writer, is still alive and is basically acting sage in Brennan.
In the Brennan, yes. So, recap primer, Nolan was, like Jill said, Tairn's previous writer, and he died saving Brennan's life. And his signet when he was a writer was he was a siphon. So basically he siphoned all of the energy around him to save Brennan. So there's a couple of really important, like, keep textual evidence. Again, I'm studying for
Cite your sources.
I'm citing my sources.
Mia.
Okay. So there's
The thing is do we think he wanted to be Venom, or he just turned Venom and now he's evil? Like, was
I
he
think
always evil?
well, are people born wicked, or do they have wickedness
I was gonna
thrust
say
upon
that.
them?
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Not the wicked tie, and I walked right into
Theater
that.
kids. Theater kids.
I was going to say.
I mean, I think that's the question, because Venom and the Dark Wielders, I think it's kind of like a drug, like what Jack Barlow describes is like,
Yeah.
he's like, you've had one hit, now you're going to be craving the next.
I think
to
if you're
Xaden.
already bad,
I
it's
think-
going to be inside
I
of
think
you,
if
and it's
you're
just gross.
power
Yeah.
hungry, you know, there's got to be some tie there.
I
So
agree.
the theory goes that Nyland, while trying to save Brennan's life, he, you know, allegedly burned out and reached burnout by trying to channel too much of Tairn's power. I think he reached burnout and then began channeling like a Venom, Dark Wielder magic, ends up saving Brennan's life, turns fully Venom, and is now like a general, which they call a maven. That's like his level. Violet thinks he's a sage. At the end of the book, we realize he's actually a
Yeah,
maven.
I think it also makes sense to why the sage wants Xaden
them.
and Violet so
Yeah.
badly, because he's clearly connected to them. Like, in some way,
Exactly.
wouldn't he still be? I mean, I guess you're cut off in their mind hole, like
Yeah.
how they're all connected when you
Yeah,
become
yeah.
Venom. But in a way, they're all still connected because Nolan is Tairn's previous writer. So it makes
Exactly.
sense, like, why the 3 most powerful writers would want to be, you know, why they would
Exactly.
become Venom essentially.
Yeah. And okay, so there's a couple like different pieces of this theory. I think that Brennan and Nyland were lovers, and I honestly think this is like pretty like
That's
not even
spicy.
like I don't wait
Our first gay no
Rhiannon's
Rhiannon's bi.
Rhiannon's bi.
Yeah, Rhiannon's bi. We've got some other gay characters.
Is
for
Riddick
sure.
or the other guy?
Riddick is straight
Gay?
and Sawyer is straight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love
But-
love
There-
the
but,
representation.
Love is love.
Yeah. Love is love. even in the writer's quadrant. Actually, ever like
I feel like
they're
in these
all
fantasy
fucking
books.
like,
Yeah, in these fantasy books, I feel like no one questions the like
yeah, same sex
gayness.
couples.
Everyone's like, oh yeah, like
Yeah. So we have this quote where it's when Violet first wakes up and she's reconnecting with Brennan. So this is the very, very beginning of Iron Flame. Quote, Nylin, he was, his jaw flexes. That's Brennan. Tairn's previous writer, I suggest slowly, wondering if he was more than that to Brennan. Okay. Gay. It's giving like gay. Like, I'm sorry.
Not you reading that and then going gay.
No, literally, my note in my annotation in my Kindle
It's
app
just
is
gay.
just gay in all caps.
It's giving fruity.
I mean, like, if your younger sister is clocking that, like, come on.
Wait, what's that? I love that TikTok trend where it's like how like different, or it was like my Spotify Wrapped, and it was like, he's gay. He's one of them queers.
Yeah, no, that's literally like what played in my mind. So Brennan, gay, for Nailin. So, okay, a couple other points. I think Tairn knows or suspects because after that conversation with Brennan, Tairn and Violet are talking mind to mind, and Violet says, "I'm sorry your rider died saving my brother." And Tairn replies to her, "We will no longer speak of the one who came before." Tairn's voice is rough.
He who must not be named.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to do that. Like, it's like we keep setting you up for a Harry Potter reference. I almost think the listeners need to do like a shot game during this episode. Like, how many times is Carly going to reference a Harry Potter?
Jill, this is like every episode, the way my mind just brings in so many connections. Mia's nodding.
This is it's the connection clock.
Yes, Mia's
The scoreboard.
Yeah, Mia's the theory expert. I'm the connection clock. We need to workshop that name.
Well, close enough. Okay, next piece of evidence for Nylin. We also have Brennan tells Violet Nylin didn't fail, but it cost him everything, talking about resurrecting
Which is
him.
essentially what happened to Xaden, too.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Nylin is just mentioned too much as a character to no longer be relevant in the series and to be dead. I think he has to be this like general and sage.
Honestly, this just came to me, and maybe you guys thought about this too, but like Brennan literally leading the rebellion is part of that because he's looking for his long lost lover.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So that gets into a couple interesting theories surrounding potentially.
Sorry, we have a special
We
guest.
have a special
joining.
guest. This is Ari and Darna.
Yes.
If you're watching our video, Carly's roommate's dog Janet
Has joined the
has joined the
party. Hi, Jan.
I think something really important to note, too, is that when Tairn is not hiding something, but not necessarily telling Violet the full truth. Like, he did this in book one when he knew what Xaden was up to, but he couldn't really tell Violet, essentially. He tends to just knock off the conversation. He won't really give you an answer. He gives you a non-answer. And I think that's very telling of who he is as his character.
Right.
Because there's dragon code. They can't always share things outside of...
dragons abide by their
and
own.
I think
they don't answer to humans. And, like,
so he doesn't need to say anything to Violet.
Exactly.
And I think that was a very way of saying, I have the answer, but I'm not going to tell you the answer.
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
So, we know that if this character, the Venom general, is Nylin, he is seeking out Violet and Xaden.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Which, and then coming back to Brennan, I think the big question that's on everyone's mind is Brennan evil? And the three of us debated this like intensely before.
Yeah, well, I think it's just the opposite end. It's like we got one end where they're, covering up that Venom exists and all this propaganda, but then there's always going to be the other extreme end. Like, sorry, another connection. But like it's kind of giving like President Snow in Hunger Games, and he's so evil. But then we got President Coin in District 13, and while she's trying to like fight against, the Capitol and everything, and but like she's also evil kind of in her own right. And like at the end of the day, Katniss is like, both you guys are wrong.
Coin.
So like
two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, two sides of the same coin. Like I feel like when there's a rebellion, there's kind of always like this other extreme, and like it's just it's like while it's better, it's also worse. Like, and I think that just plays back to like modern politics and like the modern world. That's just a nod to everything. But I am curious if there's only so much we can find out in one book. I definitely foresee us figuring out Violet's second signet in Onyx Storm, but like who knows if we'll figure out the Sage Brennan's intentions. That might be something that's played up more for even the next book after this.
Yeah.
I actually see that being how she ends this book, like a callback to the first book when we see Brennan, we realize he's alive. I see another truth about him being sort of unveiled at the end of this book.
Yeah.
I do also think it makes sense, going back to your comment about how Brennan is in love with Naolan. It would make sense that Brennan is actually evil and playing for Naolan's side.
Yeah.
And essentially she's been teaming up with him this whole time.
Or maybe he's just a
Evil, I think
complex
he's morally
character
gray.
and morally gray, right? Like, I mean, I think that's like, you know, the interesting
Yeah.
part. So, there's also a couple like
We also-
pieces of textual evidence we have.
We
too.
haven't even talked about Mira, the middle sister.
Yes.
Like, she was also someone where, like, she followed orders, like, was very much, like, following that. So I'm also
their
curious.
mother's daughter.
Yeah, very much their mother's daughter. And obviously General Sorrengail was so morally gray. Like, I'm just so curious how all the Sorrengails are going.
Yeah, the Sorrengail
Yeah.
siblings are going to be quite important.
Yeah.
So that actually honestly brings up a good point. We have, you know, the fables of the barons.
Do you want to explain the fable? It is a callback to Harry Potter.
Yes.
I'll let Mia take this one.
Okay, so we'll come back to this, but essentially there's one fable and story about three brothers, and it says that one brother bonded a griffin and became a griffin rider, one bonded a dragon, became a dragon rider, and one got jealous and took from the source, aka turned venom. So jealous sibling, like it's just it's really, you know, it's interesting. Like, is there the parallels? Is it the three Sorrengail siblings? Maybe. Is Brennan the third jealous one? And then there's, you know, the one sibling that also commanded the power of the sky. That's clearly Violet. But the foreshadowing, I think, is there with Brennan, because I think one interesting piece that's actually been floating around TikTok a lot, I'm not sure like who necessarily first pointed this out or came up with it, but something that I noticed on my reread as well is that Brennan is bonded to an Marb, the way I know the dragon's name, an orange dragon.
The way that I could, if you literally, like, this was the last question I had to answer on Earth to get like a piece of food, I could not have answered this.
Piece of food. I was gonna say, like, shotgun to my head, like I'm dead.
Say that on your podcast.
Girl,
You're allowed to say everything.
anything
here.
goes.
So, Brennan's dragon is an orange dragon, and the dragon types account for personality. So, like, each of the dragons have their personality types, right? Like, green dragons are known for their intellect. That's why Rhiannon is bonded to a green dragon. That's why Mira is bonded to a green dragon. Black dragons are known for their, like, discernment and judgment. That's why Violet is bonded to a black dragon. That's why the General Melgren.
Truthsayer.
Again. Truthsayer. Blue dragons are known to be ruthless. That's why Xaden is bonded to Scale, a blue dragon. Orange dragons are known to be, like, quoted unstable, the most unstable of the
Varish
breed
also
of
had
dragons.
an orange dragon.
So the two characters who, like, we know are, you know, the evil spectrum are Jack Barlow and Major Varish, and they are both bonded to orange dragons. Like, I just think that can't be a coincidence. Like, if you think about storytelling and foreshadowing and all those things, like, there's no way that our two evil characters that Violet has killed and or attempted to kill with Jack Barlow and Major Varish were bonded to orange dragons, and their dragons were fucking insane.
I agree. I also think, like, all the dragons are comfy with Violet. Like, they never have an issue with her. Like, during the when they go check out the dragons, they get to pick who they want. They're always chill with her. Like, they don't burn her to the ground. They don't kill her. She can speak to her friends, other dragons. But I would think, like, okay, they're siblings. You would think that the siblings also have a similar
the same
effect with
respect,
dragons.
yeah.
But Xaden's dragon hates Brennan.
Yes.
Like, she's really, really uncomfortable around him. And I feel like she's super intuitive. And again, she probably, if something is wrong, cannot say it.
Intuitive. It's like he's intinsic, and he gets that power from her.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and that's another important point, that Scale, Xaden's dragon, doesn't like Brennan, and Brennan even says, word for word, he goes, "She just doesn't like me, never has." So, like, you know, I trust Scale's judgment. Like, what do because the dragons know there's dragon politics on the other side of all this bond that the humans don't know. So, I mean, I just think it's interesting. Obviously, like, dragons are good judges of character. Like, that's the entire reason for, like, going through threshing is finding the dragon that'll bond with you, blah, 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 all of that. So, like, Brennan, I think, is, like, a big question mark for me. You know? Are you born wicked? Is wickedness thrust upon you?
Not the second quoting of that.
You know? I'm just saying.
No, we'll have to see for sure. Like like I said, there's so many players around. At the end of the day, it's like, do people just want power? And I think anyone that's power hungry is kind of evil. They're kind of morally gray. So
Exactly.
And there's just so much that we don't know about him, and obviously it's already sketchy that he let his family think he was dead
For
when
6
he
years.
wasn't. Yeah.
All right. So next on family ties, we have Venom, or we have Violet and her potential familial ties to being, quote, part Venom, dare I say. So this is a big one. Clearly, Violet has some tie to Venom power. I think there's like a couple different ways that Rebecca Yarros could take this, but I think we've got her hair, which the ends of her hair
And she has said, like, Rebecca's come out and
Yes.
said her hair is important.
Important.
She just has not shared it.
Yes. So the ends of her hair are drained of color the way that, you know, Venom channel and drain the life around them to be able to channel.
That was a beautiful simile, Mia.
And thank you. Wow.
Metaphor?
Aw,
A beautiful
yeah.
metaphor, yeah. Metaphor.
A simile.
Violet is described as being frail because of a fever from her childhood. I think that is actually an effect of either one of her parents being part Venom or potentially General Sorrengail, her mom, channeling while pregnant with Violet and like potentially wielding dark magic.
Yeah.
I do also think it would make sense because I think her mom making that ultimate sacrifice at the end is almost a guilt, like an effort of guilt to make up for all of her actions. And I do think it probably has a lot more to do with the shitty childhood that she's given, and probably a lot more to do with her actions that were created when Violet was younger, and likely due to the fact that either she was Venom at one point or Violet's dad was Venom at one point, and it's her fault, the reason like Violet is the way she is.
They weren't Venom, but I do agree. I see it more what Mia was saying with like her mom channeling into that power, and then it's somehow kind of like fucking with Violet. Maybe she didn't know she was pregnant at the time when she was channeling, and then, you know, or I feel like that'd be crazy. She did it when she knew she was pregnant. So it kind of seems to me like maybe Violet was like an accidental pregnancy. I mean, she's the youngest child. Like she was channeling, something happened.
Or their life was in danger and General Sorrengail knew the only way to save her would be to channel even if she was pregnant, or like, you know, like whatever.
But yeah, but also with like General Sorrengail dying, I mean, I think it also is just at the end of the day, no matter how what's the word I'm looking for, like cold she was and not loving to her kids, she was a mother, and at the end of the day, most mothers are going to give up their lives to protect their babies.
I mean, she literally like says, like, there's another recovered letter from General Sorrengail to her husband, and she's like, you know me, my love, like most generals dream of falling in battle, but you and I both know that when I fall, it'll be to protect our children.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with the cure, essentially, to finding the Venom.
Definitely has.
Her dad is clearly warped in that world.
Yes. So obviously Violet's dad, being a scribe and being a high up scribe working in the archives, he either knew the truth and like was trying in his own way to research, because we know that he was working on a research project before he died and he wasn't able to finish that research. I think whatever he was researching had to do with the Venom, had to do with the cure. I think it makes the most sense if he was looking for a cure, knowing that it affected Violet.
Whistleblower.
You know,
the whistleblower.
Yeah.
I think is like the situation around him dying, like I feel like we're not super clear on how he even died.
We aren't.
They say it was like a broken heart.
Yeah, they say he died of a broken heart after
I feel
learning
like
about
there's
Brennan.
something there too.
Yeah. Yep. So
about
definitely
his research, he was about to uncover something, and I feel like there was some foul play there.
Well, and because General Sorrengail even tells Violet in Iron Flame, she says, I couldn't let you enter the scribe quadrant because I knew you were too smart and you were going to figure it out and they were going to kill you.
Yeah,
so
I
like
think the scribes are not good.
So she would be afraid of that if that had happened to her husband.
Well, I don't actually know, and someone correct me if I'm totally blanking out on this, but this head scribe, Markham, he's evil. Like, 100%. Like that.
I mean, he was purporting
so suspicious.
this, like,
he was clearly creating lies. Like, he's 100% in on it. And I think that's why she wasn't allowed to enter it, because essentially if Markham had found her, I think he probably would have either killed her or captured her, or they would have found a way to use her in some aspect. And I think he's probably the cause of her dad's death as well.
Right. I mean, he has to be tied to it in some way. So, you know, lots of potential with her dad and whatever she was researching. Like,
her
was
dad
it
also
to do with
gave
the
her
cure?
the forbidden book,
Yes.
essentially, which
Yes.
is no longer in existence.
Right.
And I think all of that was to prepare her to ensure that she had the information, so one day that she could, take this and obviously find the cure herself.
Yeah, and Violet even says that in Fourth Wing, like with the note that he left her, because Violet's dad left a note with the book that's like, I know you'll make the right decision when the time is right.
Exactly.
Like, he was trying her best to warn her and protect her in his own way.
Yeah. And I feel like he left that note, like, that sounds so ominous, like, knowing he was about to die.
Exactly.
Knowing someone was out to get him, and it was only a matter of time before it happened.
Exactly, 100%.
Agreed.
So the last, potential clue we have around Violet being part Venom is that we also know at the end of the book, one of the little top chapter markers is a note from Lieutenant Colonel Nolan, who's the mender that has mended Violet throughout her whole life, to General Sorrengill, and the missive reads, "We have tried every method we know of as he requested. There is no cure. There is only control." So this is clearly about Venom, and it's, it's an unnamed, undated missive. Like, is it about Jack Barlow? I don't know. I don't think that General Sorrengill knew what Varish and Nolan were doing with Jack Barlow. So I think it makes more sense that at some unnamed date in the past, General Sorrengill and Nolan were looking for a cure. And this is Nolan's writing saying, we've tried every method. There is no cure. There's only control. So, like, why would General Sorrengill be looking for a cure? Sure, to save her kingdom from a threat that they don't even know about, or because she
herself was turned venom.
She herself is affected.
Yeah, and it just makes sense adding on to the fact, like, okay, if we go back to the resurrection theory, Violet would need to essentially talk to her mom to see how she kept human all this time, because no one else knew.
Exactly.
Which is key to how we find out where Xaden goes from here,
Right.
too.
Key for Xaden. So I think definitely, like, Violet's tie to the Venom, like, all of that's going to be important. Also, we have, like,
And also there's, we already talked about why the sage maven whatever is very interested in Violet, but also makes sense that they would be really interested in Violet because she has some Venom tie already.
Yes, 100%. So moving on, next theory / like important kind of pieces of information. Obviously at the end of the book we have the reveal, Andarna, our girl, 7th breed of dragon. So I think the most important key is that she was, quote, left behind for these wards as the 7th breed of dragon. So she was the key to making new wards. So for 600 years, Navarre has existed behind these wards, and nobody knew how to actually, like, make the ward, like, make new wards. All that Navarre could do was extend the wards with the alloy. And that was the only thing that they could do. So they made all these outposts to kind of extend the wards, but they weren't actually able to create new ones.
Do we know who made the original wards? Like
the first 6 writers that founded Basgiath.
So is it just lost to time how they created the wards?
Yes, that's the entire plot of Iron Flame.
That is also essentially what Jasenia is doing the entire book.
Yeah.
Is trying to just
Jasenia and
transcribe the
Violet
journal.
Okay, coming back to me now.
Yeah. Yep. That's yeah. So so in this interaction between Violet and Andarna while they're getting ready to cast the wards again at the end of Iron Flame to save the day, we have this interaction. Andarna tells Violet, "I waited 650 years to hatch. Waited until your 18th summer when I heard our elders talk about the weakling daughter of their general. The girl forecasted to become the head of the scribes, and I knew. You would have the mind of a scribe and the heart of a writer. You would be mine." First of all, cry. Then Violet goes on to say, "You are not a black dragon or any of the 6 that we know of. You're a 7th breed." And Darna goes on to say, "It is why I was left behind, at least from what I remember, it has been centuries." So 650 years ago, that's 50 years before the actual Great War and when Navarre was founded, which was 600 years ago. So Andarna's parents, her den, whatever, left her as an egg to hatch when she would be needed most. Mm-hmm. And somehow, we don't really know this, Andarna chose to hatch hearing about Violet so that she would be ready to bond her even as a juvenile.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you think we're going to find, do you think we're going to find other members of this breed?
I don't think so.
Or do you think they're all dead?
No, because she tells Tairn, "I'm the head of my den. Like, you can't tell me what to do." I think that's it. I think it's just her. Yeah.
Got it.
So they knew that they would only have one shot at remaking the wards because the same dragon's breath of fire can can only be used once. Like, it can't be used again to make new words. And so that's why they're only able to re-raise them at Basgiath, and they won't be able to do it again at Eredia because Andarna is the only breed.
And also,
Only if
as
they-
a reminder, Andarna's power that, like, they basically have to keep secret is the fact that she can stop time.
Well, she could as a feather tail. She can't.
Okay,
No,
okay.
she
She
can
can.
no longer
She lost
stop
that
time
in
in the dreamless sleep.
Yeah. But
yes.
important, because, like,
All feather tails can essentially stop time. Or
Yeah.
But they have some sort of
some
power.
sort of insane power that no one
Yeah.
else has. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't, and humans never knew about that
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they kept them a
Which is why
secret because they're babies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Andarna is clearly very important. Like, I think it goes back to that quote where it's like, something killed off the Venin 600 years ago and we're actively looking for that weapon.
It's her.
Clearly Andarna is the
Is the
weapon.
weapon.
Or something.
Our baby Andarna.
Our baby Andarna.
is the weapon.
And I think it's in
Jellycat.
Jellycat Andarna.
She's scary.
She's here. Do the roar.
Oh, God.
So Andarna gonna be very important. I think it's important that in the writers of the first the journals of the first writers, Lyra and Warwick, the difference between saying the word 7, the translation being 7, versus the 6 and the 1. Like, if the 1 is Andarna, she's clearly a more important special breed of dragon.
I am curious who the original, who the rider essentially was of the one.
Of Andarna's
600
breed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it's going to be a royal. Maybe it's someone connected to Xaden's line. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
I just think it's going to be much more important now that
Yeah.
we have all these details. Because
Right.
clearly that, like, if Tairn's rider is as important as we think, I do think Andarna's rider is going to be as important as we think too, given who Violet is.
100%. So, okay. Andarna, magic, Venin, everything. I think a couple more points on the Venin. So, like, recapping, like, the fake propaganda history, right, is that, like, the Venin are just, like, a myth, fairy tale, fable, blah, 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 whatever. IRL, 600 years ago, the Venin came out of the Barrens, which is now a deserted stretch of land.
Oh, Mia, you clocked that one. I didn't even pick up on that.
Chilly.
I
This is
missed
important. Just
I missed
cool.
that fact.
Cool. Okay. So the
Can you teach both
Venin,
of
the
us?
Venin originally came from the Barrens, and they drained that land completely dry.
The
which
Isles.
is now no. The Isles are
Oh.
separate. So the Barrens on the map, it's like the Navarre is the left-hand side of the continent, and then there's the mountain range, and then the top right, so like the northwest corner is the Barrens, and then the southwest corner, southeast. Yeah, northeast and southeast is Paromial.
Never eat sour watermelon.
I'm sorry. I've literally never heard of that in my life.
Oh, it's like
Kind
the
of a
way
slay.
you remember the compass. Yeah.
Okay. So that's why the fairy tale that's why the fables is titled Fables from the Barrens.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Right. No.
Yeah.
We're back.
So
Locking back in.
We
Right.
are sat now.
logging back in. So they say, like, in the propaganda story, quote, Violet is thinking this in Battle Brave one day, the dry desert-covered peninsula in the southeast that all dragon kind abandoned after General Daramore ruined the land during the Great War. That's what she's describing as the Barrens. That's what she thinks the Barrens is. So all dragon kind abandoned the Barrens because of the Venin not
Right.
draining the land dry of magic. So, like, it wasn't their, like, General Daramore who ruined the land. It was the Venin, clearly. So, like, the dragons knew that threat back then. They fled the Barrens, and they established the Vale, the hatching grounds, at Basgiath instead. Right? So, a couple of other important things about Venin. We know that Venin are, like, teaching each other. That's why they have the sages, like, they're teachers. And there's also levels of Venin. So, we have this other quote, and this is... quote, defeating a dark wielder begins with knowing where they rank in age and experience. Initiates have reddish rings to their eyes that come and go depending on how often they drain. Asims' eyes fluctuate in degrees of red and their veins distend when riled. Sages, those responsible for initiates, eyes are permanently red, their veins perpetually distended toward their temples, expanding with age. And mavens, their generals, have never been captured for examination. And the book title is Venin, a Compendium by Captain Drake Cordella of the Nightwing Drift. And fun fact, that's also Kat and Serena's cousin, Drake, who was like briefly mentioned. So he wrote this book for the Cliffspan Academy for fighting Venom.
Right, I remember this.
So there's like the 4 levels of Venom, right? So Xaden is this initiate level. And that's also why, potentially going back to General Sorrengail channeling, Violet has a memory of her childhood of General Sorrengail having red-rimmed eyes after a mission one day. So like, you know,
Yeah, I guess
some potential ties to wielding and like whatever.
And I think something I hope she does, like I hope we do learn is, okay, how long does this initiate level? Like again,
Exactly.
like is it based off who your character is that keeps you as human as long as possible, you know, or is it
because it's like how often, if it's how often you're channeling,
Exactly.
like what is Jack Barlow, and then like within the wards, what we find out is that like originally he thought it was impossible to channel, but Jack Barlow says that's not true. It's just a lot harder, which is why Xaden is ultimately able to channel even within the wards. So yeah. Then the last thing is that Venom are obviously seeking magic, and so they want the wards down, and they want all of the magic in the hatching grounds from the dragons. So, you know, all of this being said, then this goes into, that's all the Venom lore. There's a little bit of dragon lore that I think is important here too. So like, we know this series is the Empyrean series. That's like literally the title of the series. The Empyrean, like it's not titled, you know, Violet and Xaden save the day.
the Basgiath,
like the Basgiath, whatever. It's
no,
the Empyrean.
it's the dragon.
And the
dragons control
Empyrean is
everything.
the political body
Of the dragons.
governing body of the dragons, right? And so there's a lot of we learn a lot more dragon lore in Iron Flame, and like clearly Violet is learning all of this stuff that had like never actually been, you know, shared before with writers. Another important note is that Tairn tells Violet the first 6 riders were desperate to save their people when they approached the dens over 600 years ago. Those dragons formed the first Empyrean and bonded humans only to protect their hatching grounds from Venom, who were the bigger threat. We don't exactly have opposable thumbs for wielding wards or runes. So sassy. Neither species has ever been entirely truthful, both using the other for their own reasons and nothing more. And that is Tairn telling Violet that directly. So 600 years ago, the dragons fled the barons because the Venom were the bigger threat. The first riders approached the dragons to make this deal and formed the first Empyrean. So what's important is that those dragons formed the first Empyrean. So like the current Empyrean, which like Tairn isn't necessarily part of, but like their elders basically, I think, like are the Empyrean in the decision making. They've known all along, but they knew the only way that they were going to be able to protect themselves, to protect dragons protect dragonkind, was to partner with the humans, and like even if going along with like the lie and the propaganda and like whatever, it didn't matter. They needed the humans' magic and their ability to weave words and runes.
Yeah, everyone's a bit self-serving, which is kind of
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, which is very interesting. So lots of dragon lore, lots of Venom lore. Last couple points, you mentioned the Isles. I think coming up into Onyx Storm, and this is like a personal headcanon, because when I was rereading, I realized how often the Isles and the surrounding Isles were brought up multiple times. And I never clocked this on my first read because it obviously wasn't important yet. I think it's going to be important for Onyx Storm because they have to find allies. And the only allies that exist, there's the continent and then there's the surrounding islands. So turns out the Paromial had even been trading with some of the Isles. Like Violet wears a silk dress that's like silk from one of the islands. And they're like, the Viscount's maid is like, yeah, the Viscount was trading with them up until a couple years ago.
Yeah, I definitely foresee there being different settings, like them exploring the Isles. Like, I feel like we need to move off of the continent to like keep exploring this world. Well, I just feel like there's a map for a reason, and like usually when there's something on a map, like you're going, even you're not just going to hear about it, you're going to explore it at some point.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think storytelling wise, it also makes sense. Like we have, you know, Rebecca's planned a 5-book series. So like series or book 3 in the series kind of being like the call to adventure, like trying to solve the problem, like finding allies. Like it feels like an Heir of Fire, Queen of Shadows type.
I do also wonder if someone, I know we sort of played around with the idea, okay, maybe it's Xaden's mom or Violet's dad that's still alive, and maybe they're connected to the Venom still, but I wonder if they're connected to the Isles and that's how they come to play. You know?
Interesting. Yeah.
Like if that, you know, both of them have technically been exiled.
Right.
So maybe they're exiled to the Isles. Like we don't know where all these people are going, you know?
Yeah. So I think the allies are going to be important. I think it's also important because Brennan even points out to General Melgren and General Sorrengill, he's like, who are you going to ask for help? The allies that you cut off contact with 600 years ago, because the Isles were their allies in the original Great War. So the Isles know about Venin, or probably, if they haven't lied to their citizens and wiped all their history, they have to know about the Venin being the actual threat because they fought in the Great War.
There's for sure going to be some sort of like having to convince these Isles to help them fight against the Venin, especially after like they've been cut off from that world. Like, I foresee it, like you said, an adventure. Like I feel like the 5th book of that truly is the 5th and final. Like, that's going to be this like main war, whatever.
Yeah, Avengers Endgame.
But like this is the adventure.
we're like an Avengers Age of Ultron.
Delayed reaction to the Avengers Endgame. Yeah, I was gonna say Kingdom of Ash, and then basically like 4th book is going to be them like trying to find some solution in anticipation of this war, or even preventing the war. But yeah, I feel like this 3rd book is going to be the adventure, because the first 2 books we were really just discovering everything, and like we said, Iron Flame was so world building, like even more so than 4th Wing, that I feel like the world is built. I really hope I don't have
the world is built.
I really hope I don't have to do as much world building as we did in Iron Flame, because I was rereading some of those chapters like 5 times before I actually understood it. So an adventure would be kind of like a nice next step for our world here.
I do unfortunately think we're not gonna see the cure for Xaden this book. Like, there's 3 books left.
I think that's gonna be like 4th book.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
maybe
It's giving Tower Dawn. Kale's trying to find solution to him being. I'm not even gonna say, because like, what if someone listening to this hasn't read his own book?
Dane gets his own book. That's book 4.
Xaden gets his own.
It's just
Dane's redemption arc.
I think I would have to just log off.
Yeah, that was supposed to be a novella, but ends up becoming a fucking 800-page.
It's just Dane.
Yeah. So I am just so curious, like, Onyx Storm, I have so many questions. Like, there's so much that I feel like we could like literally spin around and around and around in circles, but ultimately answers are close.
Ish. Close. We do know, or at least I fucking pray, that hopefully there'll be some smut scenes in here. I mean, like, we had some great smut in the first book, 4th Wing. Then the 2nd book, Iron Flame, we got even more smut. And I'm like, okay, let's bring in even more for the 3rd. Ready for it. Come on. I mean, my woman.
The world is built. Give me the smut.
Give me the smut.
My house, my chair, my woman.
Yes. Yeah. We need, I feel like, how are we going to top that scene?
I don't know. Rebecca better have something up her sleeve.
Like, they're in the water.
Ooh, sexy.
But water sex is like tough. I guess
It's a fantasy book. It's a fantasy book.
Maybe there's like some magic lube to like make it easier or something.
I could see it being like, oh, they're on this like paradise island, you know, and like it's like a little like retreat.
Yeah, some like intense venom sex. Like, you never know.
Or like, guys, imagine, this is just like me hoping, but like maybe there's like a ball, like they're like being like hosted by like the kingdom.
Oh, we definitely. Like, I feel like we already kind of had that with
some,
like the dinner at.
Yeah, there was like dinner.
The Riorson Palace, but the dagger sheathed to the thigh.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, Violet and her daggers.
I do wonder, once we read, how many of these theories are going to come to life, how many we're going to keep, like, you know, theorizing about, what's going to be wrong.
I feel like I kind of want to make a bingo card. Like, I made a bingo card for House of Flame and Shadow, so I think we should make a bingo card with all of our theories for and, like, random things that are going to happen.
My biggest fear with this book is that it becomes like a house of, like, it becomes like the 3rd book of Crescent City, essentially, and we just don't get everything
that we're hoping for, because we've been theorizing.
Another world building.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much climactic opportunity here, and like we're all just sitting here like on our toes waiting for Rebecca.
Yeah. I mean, I will say these books are written so quickly.
Yeah. So, and like, Rebecca has said that after Onyx Storm, she's taking a break.
Yeah. I honestly, like, you know, while it's horrible to wait so long, like SJM, for example, takes like multiple years to come out with a new book. It's like you kind of have to sit on it. Like,
yeah.
I prefer a book that's going to be really good because it took a while versus something that's just being churned out yearly to like appease readers.
I think we also forget, like, Rebecca has other books. Like, she's not only writing 4th Wing.
She also has a family.
Yeah. Yeah.
a working
No,
mother.
I mean, like,
got a life.
Like, I mean, not that like SJM is like the bar for everything, but like SJM did have like a 1 to 2 book a year publishing
Yeah.
cadence before becoming a mom, and
Yeah,
like that's like
exactly.
what slowed down since like 2019 or along those lines.
For sure. No, I
So, yeah.
mean, I hope it's going to live up to expectations. There's a lot, like we said, riding on this. We have a lot of excitement going into it. I know people have taken work off, like Laurel, Mia's cousin.
Yeah, my cousin is a school teacher, 5th grade teacher. She and her coworker bestie, who are like basically like us reading romantic books, coworker besties,
Yeah.
took the day off.
It's on
because
out
they
on the
they were
28th.
like America's Youth can wait.
Out on the 21st, right?
Yeah.
America's Youth Can Wait. God, that's going to be tough Tuesday at work.
Yeah.
Guess
I'm going to be
coming
home.
I
I'm going to
will-
be working at home.
I actually have the day off because I'll be coming back from vacation.
Oh, yeah.
So
You can tuck
For
in.
you, Jill.
Thank you.
Good for you. I'll likely be in office twiddling my thumbs until I can go home and dive in.
I'll keep
So,
everything a secret. I'll just be like waiting for everyone to dive
yes. But we will be doing a Onyx Storm deep dive, of course. And again, shameless plug. If you need a refresher on Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, we have deep dive episodes for both of those. So go
Individually.
re-listen. Yeah, individually. Go re-listen to those. Then re-listen to this. And I think you'll be prepared for Onyx Storm because we're definitely ready. I feel like it was a year ago when this got announced, and I can't believe it's almost here. Time really fucking flies. But yeah, maybe this will be finally 2025 off to a good start with everything else going on in the world. I'm like, we need this. We need this.
Yeah. Get me back to Navarre.
Yeah.
Get me back to my Shadow Daddy. Get me back to my Sassy Dragons.
Yes, but we are ready. And thanks, guys, for listening to this really long deep dive episode. No, it's longer than our usual format, but we could have gone for another 5 hours. So this is us really synthesizing all of our theories. As you guys know, we are always looking for book recs. So if you have a suggestion, shoot us a DM on TikTok, as long as it's here at Reading Renting Pod, or email us at readingrentingpod@gmail.com.
And we would love and appreciate it if you guys could rate and review our podcast from wherever you are listening. Happy reading, besties.